Joining me now is Veronica McClane. She is the chairperson of Citizens for Arkansas Public Education and Students, also known as CAPES. Veronica, thank you so much for being with us. How are you today?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
Tell me a little bit about your background and what drew you to this cause. I think you're kind of new on the political scene, at least to me. So tell me what got you involved in this.
Yeah, so my paying job, I'm a social worker, I'm a mental health professional. And so, as a social worker, being an advocate is part of what we're called to do as our code of ethics. And I grew up here in Little Rock. I'm a graduate of public schools, and my children both go to public schools here in Little Rock. And so public education has been something that I've been very passionate about for quite some time. And, I help run a group here in Little Rock and kind of throughout the state on Facebook called Friends of Public Education Network. And we work to support public education because we know how valuable public education is to our communities. And so when the LEARNS Act was kind of pushed through, it was a punch in the gut a little bit because I've been working for a long time, especially here in the Little Rock School District. We've had quite a few issues over the years, as I'm sure you know.
Right.
And so that kind of led me to recognize that maybe we needed to fight a little bit harder for public ed, especially against the LEARNS Act.
So talk to me a little bit about who all is kind of CAPES encapsulizes and what is CAPES' biggest beef with the LEARNS Act? I mean, I have to think that you are supportive of teacher pay, supportive of more money for reading literacy, but there are obviously things like the voucher program that's in there and other aspects that you have obviously some problems with. So tell me a little bit about the CAPES as an organization and what specifically do you think you guys have honed in on that you are not satisfied with?
So CAPES is made up of volunteers. We're a fully volunteer organization. We have educators, parents, people from all over the state. We even have some students that have helped us out with some things. They've just volunteered to do some stuff. And we are made up of people across the state. We have volunteers, and I think last count was 54 counties out of the state. And so with the LEARNS Act, a couple of issues that really kind of stand out is a lot of them are unfunded mandates in a lot of ways. And so we don't know what the true impact is going to be of the LEARNS Act on public education. And so if we're talking about doing a bold piece of legislation that completely changes a lot of the ways that public education is managed and funded and things like that, we really needed to take some more time to look at it, to get feedback from the community. The speed with which it was passed through the legislature during the session was really, really, really bad. And I think anybody who was watching that could see that people were not being heard, their questions were not being answered. And yeah, teacher pay is great, but what about the other people who work in schools? There's really nothing in there for them.
Right. So you guys are trying to get a referendum on the ballot. It's a tricky, complicated, little used process in the state constitution. You've been rejected 2 times by the Attorney General for your ballot title. You've met with the Attorney General's office on a 3rd attempt. Tell me why you think that the 3rd time might be the charm for getting qualified.
Well, I think one of the biggest issues has been and we were appreciative of them willing to sit down with us to kind of discuss it. But one of the biggest things is they have written an 145-page piece of legislation that is really hard to summarize within the rules of a ballot title. And so what we've ended up with is actually quite a long summary because the ballot title has to be inclusive, but also brief. It has to, you can't leave anything out. the way that you rank things in there has to, what they said to us is you can't put something that you want to hide at the bottom, which we would never try to do anyway. But it's all about how you write it, and are you giving enough information to the people when they choose to vote for or against learns.
Right. So if you're rejected again, I'm just speaking hypothetically here, do you think you guys will try a fourth time, or do you think that you will start to explore some other options, and what might those other options be?
We're still discussing, what next steps would be. We are committed to this process. The only thing that has been a big issue is the time crunch. We do believe that we can get the signatures. We have a lot of volunteers ready to hit the streets, getting those signatures. But that all of that still takes time. And so we are very hopeful. We know that our hear back date from the Attorney General's office should be June 5th. And so, while we are discussing what next steps would be, we're really just trying to focus on getting our volunteers ready to start collecting signatures.
And I'm just playing devil's advocate with you here, but you're working in this tight window to repeal this effort. There's obviously a possibility that the 90 days, collapses on you and you don't get the opportunity to go pursue signatures. If that window closes, do you think CAPES pursues a potential ballot initiative in the 2024 general election where you just try to rewrite the initiated act itself, or maybe even put it in some form of constitutional amendment or some other option?
Well, we could just say that there are a lot of options out there, right? We have a lot of people who are very, very passionate about public education. And this is, the great thing about this is not a partisan issue. And so we truly believe that if we were to work on something else, if we found something better to replace Learns with, that it would be something that would truly bring the people together. No more of this divisive kind of hurtful rhetoric that's being pushed on us. Anybody that disagrees with anything is called the radical left or things like this. These are people who care about their communities. These are people who see the value in public education. And we're going to do everything we can to keep working together to make something happen for public education.
All right, she's Veronica McClane. She is the chair of Citizens for Arkansas Public Education and Students, known as CAPES. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me.